Hey, pause your scrolling for just a moment, because the story I'm about to share is one that will stay with you for a very long time. It begins with a 38-year-old billionaire, his beautiful 28-year-old fiancée, and a grand mansion that seemed to hold the perfect love story at least. That's what everyone believed. One night, one of the most powerful men in the country slipped quietly beneath his own bed in the dark and waited in silence. He wasn't hiding from danger. He wasn't playing a game. He was testing the woman he was about to give his entire life to. And what happened next in that very room involved the tiniest, most innocent soul imaginable, a 3-year-old little girl. What that child experienced that night shattered everything. Stay with me, because this story will change how you see love, power, and what truly lives inside a person's heart. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you are here today. Drop in the comments right now and tell me where you are watching from. I love seeing all your locations light up from around the world. It truly warms my heart every single time. And if you're new here and you love real, emotional, deeply human stories like this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. No pressure, but I promise every story we tell here is worth your time. Now let's begin. Because this isn't just a story, it's a mirror. Some of you are going to see yourselves in it. Some people build walls so high that even love can't climb over them. But deep down, every wall has a door, and sometimes it takes a child to find it. His name was Dominic Hale. At 38, Dominic was the kind of man people wrote articles about, not because he was flashy, but quite the opposite. He was quiet, measured, precise. The kind of man who spoke only when he had something worth saying, and when he spoke, rooms fell silent. He had built his empire from almost nothing. Born to a modest family in a mid-sized city, Dominic had watched his father work double shifts at a factory his whole childhood, only to lose the job when Dominic was 14. That moment watching his father sit at the kitchen table with his hands folded, too proud to cry yet too broken to speak, had etched something deep and lasting into Dominic's soul. He decided then and there he would never be powerless. He would never be the man at the table with nothing left. And he wasn't. By 30, he had his first company. By 34, he had 3. By 38, Dominic Hale was a billionaire. His name graced buildings. His face appeared in business magazines, and his signature moved markets. But behind all of that, he was deeply, painfully lonely. His mansion was a masterpiece, 22 rooms, marble floors, ceilings so high they felt like sky. A garden tended daily by a team of 6. It was everything a person could dream of owning. Yet at night, when the staff went home and the lights dimmed low, Dominic would sit by the large window in his study and feel the weight of every empty room pressing against him. He had dated, of course. Women found him attractive, tall, with silvered hair and dark eyes that seemed to carry a quiet storm behind them. But every relationship had ended the same way. He could never be sure. Was it him they wanted? Or was it the name, the money, the lifestyle? The question haunted him until Elena Voss was 28 when she walked into Dominic's life at a charity gala, not as a guest, but as a volunteer coordinator. She was organizing seating arrangements, calm and efficient amid the chaos, wearing a simple navy dress while everyone around her sparkled in designer gowns. He noticed her precisely because she wasn't trying to be noticed. They talked that evening for 2 hours, not about money, not about business, not about his achievements. They talked about books, about the sound of rain, about whether kindness was something people were born with or something they chose every day. Dominic drove home that night and couldn't stop thinking about her. They dated for a year, a quiet, beautiful year. Elena was warm, thoughtful, and seemingly gentle in a way that felt almost rare in Dominic's world. She volunteered at a children's shelter on weekends. She remembered the names of every staff member in his mansion. She brought handmade soup to his assistant when the woman had a cold. It seemed good, genuinely good, and so, months before the wedding date they had sit together. Dominic did something he would never tell another soul about. He decided to test her. Not because he doubted her, at least not consciously, but because somewhere in that wounded, guarded part of him forged at his father's kitchen table all those years ago. He needed to know. Really know. Not what Elena showed the world when cameras were present and people were watching. He needed to see who she was when she thought no one was looking at all. He began making plans quietly and told no one. Have you ever loved someone so much that the thought of being wrong about them terrified you more than anything else in the world? Have you ever needed to truly know the heart of the person standing beside you? Dominic had. And what he was about to discover would cost him everything he thought he understood about the woman he loved. Sometimes the most dangerous masks are the ones worn with a smile, and sometimes the most honest moments happen in the spaces between. Elena had moved into the east wing of the mansion at Dominic's invitation. It made sense. He had told her the wedding preparations were complex, with caterers, designers, guest lists, and venue coordinators flowing through the house daily. It was practical for her to be there. Elena had accepted graciously, with that warm, easy smile that made people around her feel immediately at ease. 31st. Everything seemed exactly as it always had been. Elena was charming with the staff. She greeted the gardeners by name every morning. She brought coffee to Marcus, Dominic's head of security, on cold days. She left little thank you notes for Mrs. Patel, the head housekeeper. After the older woman had reorganized the kitchen, Dominic watched all of this and felt something loosen in his chest. The doubt seemed foolish, almost embarrassing. This was Elena. Of course, she was who she appeared to be. But then one evening, something small happened, so small that most people would have let it pass without a second thought. Dominic had been returning from a late meeting, coming in through the side entrance quietly, as he often did, preferring not to disrupt the household with formal arrivals. He was walking past the service corridor when he heard voices, Elena's voice and another, apologetic and trembling slightly. He slowed. The other voice belonged to Rosa Delgado, the mansion's part-time cleaning assistant, a 26-year-old woman who had come to work for Dominic's household several months earlier. Rosa was quiet, diligent, and carried with her a kind of quiet dignity that Dominic had respected from the first week she arrived. Her story was a difficult one: single mother, no family nearby, working 2 jobs to support herself and her daughter. Her daughter, little Lily Delgado, was 3 years old, a tiny, enormous little girl with dark curls and a laugh that, on the rare occasions Dominic had heard it echoing through the service quarters, seemed almost too large for such a small body. Rosa had no one to leave Lily with on certain evenings, and Dominic had quietly, without fuss, told Mrs. Patel that on those nights Rosa could bring Lily to the small staff sitting room near the kitchen. It was a private arrangement, barely known, barely discussed. Standing now in the corridor, Dominic listened. Elena's voice was speaking to Rosa, and the tone of it was different, not the warm, easy tone he knew. It was clipped, precise, carrying an edge like a letter opener. "I've told you before," Elena was saying. "This is a private residence, not a daycare. The child makes noise. Last Tuesday, she was crying in the east corridor for 20 minutes. Rosa's voice was very quiet. "I'm so sorry, Miss Voss. She had a small fever." "I don't need the details, Rosa." "I need it to not happen again." "Yes, of course. I understand." Dominic stood very still in the corridor, his hand resting against the cold wall. He had heard something in Elena's voice he had never heard directed at him: flatness, dismissal, the kind of tone that doesn't shout because it doesn't need to, the kind that simply erases. He walked away quietly. He said nothing that evening, but that night, lying in the dark, Dominic stared at the ceiling for a very long time. And the plan that had been forming in the back of his mind, the one he had been talking himself out of for weeks, suddenly felt not just reasonable, but necessary. Have you ever heard someone you love speak to a person who couldn't fight back and felt something inside you go completely still? Have you ever wondered if the kindness someone shows you is just the kindness they show when it matters for them? Dominic was asking himself these questions at 2 in the morning, alone in a 20-room mansion. And the answer he was searching for was not going to come from conversation. It was going to come from hiding. The truth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on the door or send a warning. It simply arrives quietly, completely, and once you've seen it, you can never unsee it. A few days after what he had heard in the corridor, Dominic set the plan in motion. One evening, he told Elena over breakfast that he had a 2-day trip to take an emergency board meeting in another city, unavoidable. He'd be back the following night. He was very sorry. He kissed her forehead. He carried his overnight bag to the car himself. The car drove away, and 20 minutes later, through the garden gate on foot and dressed in plain clothes, Dominic Hale came back to his own house. Mrs. Patel, his most trusted staff member of many years, was the only one who knew. He had spoken to her the night before, explained only that he needed to observe things quietly, that he would return through the garden and stay in the third-floor guest room. Mrs. Patel had looked at him for a long moment with the steady gaze of a woman who had seen too much in life to be easily surprised, and then simply nodded. "I'll leave the garden gate unlatched, sir," was all she said. Dominic spent most of that day in the guest room, watching and listening. The house moved normally around him. Elena had a dress fitting in the afternoon. He could hear the designer's assistant speaking in the corridor. There was a phone call Elena took in the sitting room. Something about the wedding reception flowers, and her voice was bright and happy. Everything seemed fine, and then that night arrived. It was just past 8 when Dominic, having moved silently down the back staircase, found himself outside the master bedroom, his bedroom, the one he and Elena shared. He didn't fully understand the impulse that brought him there, something instinctive, something that wouldn't be quieted. The door was slightly ajar. Elena was inside on her phone, speaking to what sounded like a friend. Dominic was about to turn away when he heard her laugh, a particular laugh, not the warm one he knew. This one was different, conspiratorial. "Megan," she was saying, "he has no idea. Honestly, it's almost too easy." He's so desperate to believe it's real that Dominic's hand pressed flat against the wall. He stood there for 3 full seconds that felt like 3 years. Then, moving on pure cold instinct, he slipped into the room through the side dressing area. Elena's back was to him, she didn't see, and he did the only thing that made any sense to him in that suspended, terrible moment. He lowered himself to the floor and slid under the bed. He lay there in the dark, his heart hammering, his jaw tight, his mind doing what trained, disciplined minds do under pressure, going very, very quiet, waiting. Elena ended her call. She moved around the room. He heard the bathroom door close, heard water running, and then a sound from elsewhere in the house, distant at first, then closer. A child's voice, small and sweet, murmuring something in the particular half language of toddlers navigating a world too big for them. Lily. Rosa must have brought her tonight. Dominic remembered now. Rosa was on the late cleaning rotation. Lily would be in the staff sitting room. Or she should have been. The bedroom door, which Elena had left partially open, pushed wider, and in the amber glow of the hallway nightlight, a tiny figure appeared in the doorway. Lily Delgado, 3 years old, dark curls loose around her face, wearing small pajamas printed with cartoon stars, holding very seriously a stuffed rabbit that was missing one eye. She had wandered, Dominic, beneath the bed, held absolutely still. Through the gap between the bed skirt and the floor, he could see her small feet, little socks with rubber grips on the bottom, the kind mothers buy so toddlers don't slip on hard floors. Lily took 2 steps into the room, looked around with enormous wondering eyes, said something soft and uncertain to her rabbit, and then the bathroom door opened. Elena stepped out. What do you think happened next? What would you do? What would you hope you would do if you were the adult standing there, looking at a lost little child in a room where she wasn't supposed to be? The answer to that question was about to break a billionaire's heart wide open. In the space of a single moment, one unwitnessed, unguarded, unrehearsed moment, a person shows you everything. Everything they are, everything they're not, everything they'll never be. Elena stopped when she saw Lily. Dominic beneath the bed couldn't see Elena's face, but he could see her feet. He could hear her breath. There was a pause, just 2 or 3 seconds. But in the silence beneath the bed they stretched out like hours, and then Elena's feet moved. Not away, not backward in irritation, not pivoting toward the door to call for Rosa. Toward Lily, Dominic watched Elena's feet bare now. She'd taken off her shoes across the marble floor slowly, carefully. The way you approach something small and uncertain that might be frightened. Elena crouched down. He could hear her voice now, completely transformed, softer than he had ever heard it, carrying a quality he had no word for in that moment. Something between tenderness and wonder. "Hey," Elena said softly. "Hey, little one. What are you doing all the way up here?" Lily's small feet shifted. The stuffed rabbit bumped against the floor as little arms adjusted their grip. "Bun Bun," Lily said very seriously, holding the rabbit up. "Bun Bun." Elena's voice smiled. Dominic could hear the smile in it. "Is Bun Bun lost? Are you both lost?" A small sound. Lily, it seemed, was nodding. "Okay," Elena said very gently. "That's okay. Being lost is a little bit scary, isn't it? But you know what? I know exactly where your mama is, and I'm going to take you right to her. Does that sound good?" And then Dominic felt it hit him somewhere below his ribs. The small, distinctive sound of a toddler taking a step forward, choosing without words to trust. "Up we go," Elena murmured. And Dominic heard it, the soft sound of Elena lifting Lily. The toddler made a small, contented sound, the kind children make when they feel safe. "You're okay," Elena said quietly, and she wasn't using her polished voice, her social voice, her beautiful Fianchi voice. This voice was stripped of everything practiced. It was just real, warm, true. "You're totally okay, sweet girl. I've got you." Their footsteps moved toward the door, and then they stopped. "Wait," Elena said softly to herself or to Lily. Dominic couldn't tell. "You're cold." He heard movement, a drawer, fabric. And then she wrapped Lily in something warm, one of Dominic's cashmere cardigans from the dresser. He heard Lily make another small sound, pleased, burrowing. "There," Elena said. "Better. Soft," Lily said. Elena laughed. And it was the most honest laugh Dominic had ever heard from her in all the months of knowing her, small and surprised and completely unperformed. "Yes," she agreed. Very soft. And then they were gone down the hallway, and Dominic lay under the bed in the dark, completely alone with what he had just witnessed. He didn't move for a long time, because the phone call he had heard earlier, he has no idea. "It's almost too easy," was still lodged in his chest like a splinter. But now pressed against it was this moment, this small, unseen, utterly true moment with a 3-year-old and a one-eyed rabbit. Two things, both real, both Elena. Which one was the truth? Have you ever discovered something about someone that made you question everything, and then discovered something else that made you question your questioning? Have you ever felt pulled into directions by the same person at the exact same moment? Dominic lay in the dark and understood, perhaps for the first time, that people are almost never entirely one thing. But he also knew he needed to understand that phone call. He needed to know what was almost too easy, and he was going to find out. Some questions don't want to be answered, because once you have the answer, you have to decide what to do with it. And sometimes what you do with it determines who you are. Dominic remained hidden in the guest room that night, sleepless, his mind moving through everything with the same methodical precision he applied to business, laying the pieces out, examining each one, looking for pattern and truth. The phone call replayed constantly. He has no idea. It's almost too easy. He thought about Elena at the gala, her navy dress, her calm amid chaos. He thought about the months of dinners and conversations and quiet mornings. He thought about her at the children's shelter, kneeling down to tie a child's shoe without being asked. He thought about her voice with Rosa in the corridor, clipped, cold, erasing. He thought about her with Lily, wrapping a small, cold child in cashmere and carrying her home in the dark. Why the next morning? He had made a decision. He needed to know who was on that call. It took him until later that day, one carefully placed question to his head of communications, framed as a routine security review of staff phones. Nothing unusual to get the information he needed. The number Elena had been speaking to belonged to her older sister, Megan. Dominic sat with that fact for a moment. Then he thought carefully about what Elena had actually said. He realized with the particular shame of a man who has trained himself to be suspicious, that he had heard 10 words stripped of all context and built an entire prosecution from them. He needed the context. He needed to speak to Megan. He found the reason a short while later when he discovered, through Mrs. Patel, who knew everything that passed through the house, that Megan had visited the mansion recently, had tea with Elena, and had spent time helping Elena work on something in the sitting room. Mrs. Patel, choosing her words with the precise economy of a woman who knew when to speak and when not to, told him one more thing. Miss Elena asked me not to mention the visit, sir. She said she wanted it to be a surprise. Surprise. Dominique went to the sitting room, looked around, and noticed on the second shelf of the bookcase slightly MIS shelf, just slightly out of alignment with the others, a large green-colored album he didn't recognize. He pulled it out. It was a scrapbook, made carefully, beautifully made. Each page in Elena's handwriting. He knew her handwriting like he knew his own. Page after page of photographs, printed quotes, small mementos. Their first conversation noted in detail. The book they had discussed at the gala. A pressed leaf from the park where they'd walked on their third meeting. A photograph she had taken secretly on that trip they'd taken to the coast, him looking out at the water, not knowing she was watching, and she had written beneath it in her careful script, "This is the man I love." Not the buildings, not the name, just him. Near the back, a page he nearly couldn't read. It was a letter to him. Not for the wedding, not a formal vow. Just a letter, the kind you write when you're alone and honest and not performing for anyone. "I know you carry something heavy," she had written. "I know you're waiting for me to become someone disappointing. I know you've been hurt in ways you don't talk about and maybe never will. I'm not asking you to stop being careful. I'm only asking you to let me stay long enough to show you that some things are real. Real. What I feel is real, and I will spend every year of our lives proving it. Not because I have to, but because you deserve to finally believe it." Dominic sat down on the sitting room floor, right there on the marble, the scrapbook in his hands, and understood completely and without any remaining question what had been almost too easy, the surprise. The scrapbook. The anniversary of the night they met was approaching. That was the surprise. That was what Megan had been helping her build. He has no idea. He had no idea about the gift. It's almost too easy, making him happy, loving him, knowing him. That's what was almost too easy. Dominic put his face in his hands, and the billionaire who had built walls tall enough to touch the sky felt every single one of them come down. Have you ever been so afraid of being hurt that you almost destroyed the most real thing in your life? Have you ever realized that your greatest enemy wasn't the person in front of you, but the wound inside yourself? He had one more thing to do now. He had to face what he had put into motion, and he had to face what he had heard Elena say to Rosa, because that still mattered. That hadn't disappeared. The truth he was learning was always more than one thing. The bravest thing a guarded heart can do is not to test the people it loves, but to finally, completely open the door. Dominic found Rosa in the garden the following morning. She was sweeping the stone pathway near the east rose beds, moving quietly and efficiently the way she always did, and Lily was sitting nearby on a folded blanket in a patch of sunlight, entirely focused on attempting to feed a blade of grass to a stone garden ornament shaped like a frog. Dominic stood at the edge of the pathway for a moment before Rosa noticed him, watching Lily negotiate patiently with the stone frog. When Rosa looked up and saw him, her expression shifted immediately to the cautious, careful neutrality of a person who has learned that unexpected appearances by powerful people are rarely casual. "Mr. Hale," she said, straightening. "I'm sorry. I thought you were traveling." "I came back early," he said. "Rosa, sit down for a moment, please." She sat carefully on the edge of the stone bench. Lily, noticing her mother's stillness, looked up and then looked at Dominic with the frank, unfiltered assessment of a 3-year-old. He was either interesting or he wasn't, and she reserved judgment for approximately 4 seconds before returning her attention to the frog. Dominic sat on the bench beside Rosa. "I heard what Elena said to you," he said quietly. "A few nights ago in the service corridor about Lily." Rosa went very still. "I want you to know," Dominic continued, That the arrangement Lily being here when you need her to be that doesn't change. It won't change. That was my decision and it stands. Rosa looked at her hands. Miss Voss was not wrong to say. She was not wrong to raise a concern, Dominique said carefully, but the way she said it. That wasn't right. And I am sorry you were spoken to that way in a house you work hard to take care of. Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at him, and her eyes were very steady. Mr. Hale, she came to find me that same night. After, she found me in the kitchen, and she apologized. She said she had spoken sharply, and it wasn't fair. She brought Lily a little toy from the hallway basket, one of those small stuffed things, and she sat with her for a few minutes. Rosa paused. She's done that before. Sat with Lily. When she thought no one could see, Dominique looked at her. She's not always easy, Rosa said quietly. But she tries. She tries when she thinks it doesn't count. Those words moved through Dominique like a current that evening. He came out of hiding. He called Elena, told her the trip had ended early, and came home through the front door properly, luggage and everything. Elena was in the sitting room when he arrived. She looked up with her warm, uncomplicated smile, the real one. The one he had seen now in too many unguarded moments to doubt any more, and said, "You're home early. Are you hungry?" Just that simple. Real. He sat across from her and looked at her for a long moment. "Elena," he said, "I have to tell you something." And he told her everything. All of it. The corridor. The decision. The overnight bag. The garden gate. Lying on the cold marble floor under their bed in the dark. He told her about Lily in the doorway, about the cardigan, about the phone call he had misunderstood. He told her about finding the scrapbook. He told her about his father at the kitchen table. He told her about every wall he had ever built and why. He told her all of it without armor, without strategy, without protection. When he finished, the room was very quiet. Elena looked at him for a long time. Her eyes were bright, but she wasn't crying. Not yet. She was just looking at him. The way you look at something you finally understand completely. "You were under the bed," she said very slowly. "Yes, in the dark. Yes." Silence. And then something happened that Dominique did not expect. She laughed. Not a crow laugh. Not a hurt laugh. A real, full, helpless laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere so deep it bypasses all choice. The kind that is actually just love wearing its most surprised face. She pressed her hand over her mouth. Her eyes spilled over. She was laughing and crying at the same time, and she reached across the space between them and took both of his hands in hers. "You absolute disaster of a man," she said softly, shaking her head. "You wonderful, broken, terrified disaster." He held her hands. "I know," he said. "I know. I'm not going anywhere," she said. She said it the way you say the truest things, quietly, looking directly at the person who needs to hear it. "I never was." He pulled her close and held her the way he hadn't let himself hold anyone in years. Without calculation, without strategy, without measuring the risk. Just held her, and Lily Delgado, who was at that moment in the staff sitting room 3 floors below, laughing at something her mother was doing with a spoon, was completely unaware that her small, wandering, pajama-footed journey into a dark bedroom had been the tiny key that unlocked the most guarded heart in the building. A few weeks later, on their anniversary, Elena gave him the scrapbook. He had, of course, already seen it. He didn't tell her that. He turned every page as though it were the first time. And when he reached the letter at the back, "I know you carry something heavy," he read it as if reading it new. And his hands were not entirely steady by the end. "Do you like it?" Elena asked quietly. Dominique looked up at her. "I love it," he said. And what he meant, what she understood he meant, was not the scrapbook. What would you have done differently from Dominique? And here is the question I want to leave with you. How many real, true, extraordinary people have we almost lost because we were too afraid to believe in what was right in front of us? There are people in your life right now who are showing you quietly, in the unguarded moments, in the small acts when no one seems to be watching, exactly who they are. The question isn't whether the love is real. The question is whether you are brave enough to believe it. Dominique Hale built walls to protect himself from being hurt. But the only thing those walls ever truly protected him from was the life he deserved. Don't let your past wounds decide your future. Sometimes the most powerful thing you will ever do is believe someone. If this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up right now. It takes 1 second and it means the world. Drop in the comments, have you ever tested someone you love? Or has someone ever done something small, unseen, and unguarded that showed you exactly who they were? I read every single comment. Everyone. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Because every week we bring you stories exactly like this one, stories about real human hearts, real choices, and the love that survives all of it. Watch the next story coming up on screen right now. I promise you won't want to miss it. You there?